Retro.
Hello there. This is James Arnold Taylor, the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Hey, this is Catherine Tabor, Senator Padme Amidala from Star Wars The Clone Wars.
Hi, this is Vanessa Marshall, voice of Hera and Rook Cast.
Hey, this is Lauren Mary Kim, and I'm the stunt double for Ahsoka Tano in Clone Wars and the armor in The Mandalorian.
And you're listening to Dennis and Jay on Podcast Stardust.
Their behavior is continually unexpected.
So uncivilized.
This is the way.
Welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithley.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
And this is it. Episode 1000 of the fully armed and operational podcast has arrived. And we are going to celebrate and talk a lot of history, both about the podcast and Star Wars. But before we get into the festivities, Jay, you want to go ahead and remind everybody where they can find us on social media?
One of my favorite things to do, Dennis. We are on Facebook and Instagram, conveniently, as always, at Podcast Stardust.
Okay, we have our best Jedi robes on. Our lightsabers are polished. The Tanare has been chilled. Nyamos and Yubnub are blending the background. And of course, the dish is aligned. The signal is boosted to maximum output. The shield is down. And we are now broadcasting episode 1000 of Podcast Stardust to the galaxy. So here we are, Jay. I don't know about you, but this has had been feeling crazy, like for days now about this, trying to figure out how to celebrate 1,000 episodes of this podcast and all the Star Wars discussion that we've had for the last 6.25 years. But how are you feeling? What do you think about all of this?
Oh my goodness. Well, just thinking about the memories and, you had asked me like, start thinking about your favorite things and from the past 1,000 episodes. And my first thought was, how do you even choose? And it's honestly, it's just been so fun just going deeper than the headlines and just the journey and the community and meeting listeners and, where we started versus where we are now has truly been a journey. And I can't wait to dive in and have some fun with this and spark some even more conversation, as is our MO, as always. And just have a great time.
Yeah. One of the things I was trying to figure out was how to talk about this, how to talk about 1,000 episodes of the show. And I don't want this to come off as pretentious. I don't want this to come off as conceited or narcissistic on this. But, I went back and I looked at 500. That was like a huge milestone at the time. And we did a lot about our history of podcasting together and the podcast in general and our fandom for Star Wars and things like that. And we're getting into some of those elements because we got a lot of listeners that weren't around for episode 500. It's hard to find episode 500 on most podcatchers these days. But it was just like, there's so much has happened since then, in just 3 years. And so at any rate, what I decided to do is I have a single file on my Google Drive that has got all the show notes for all previous 999 episodes. And I spent a good portion of my day scrolling through those. Well, it's out of necessity because I write them there once and then copy and paste it into every place else I need to put it in order to get the show out. And it's a great resource. If I need to find something, I can search that one document. That having been said, I am starting a brand new one with 1001 because this 1000 episode thing is over 587 pages long. On Google Docs. And it's hard to search anything there because it takes a while for all that to load. And
I can imagine.
Yeah. But I scrolled through all of that just to kind of get an idea of everything we've done. I mean, I have a vague idea, but looking back in episode 1 and scrolling to the future is like, I was kind of, again, I don't want this to come off as conceited. I was a little bit impressed with everything that we've been able to do since 2019 when we started the show. And I drafted a bunch of trivia questions to kind of throw at you and then kind of scope the conversation for however long we're going to be talking about this. So
Trivia, yay!
yeah, I know you're used to
My
that.
favorite. No, I
These
love
aren't
it.
as torturous as the movie trivia that I've been giving to you for the past couple of years.
Oh, it's never torturous,
Eh,
you know.
Okay. Well, up first, one of your favorite things, and you are the brainchild. This is your brainchild, I should say. The first episode of World Between Worlds appeared in which episode of the podcast? And this is multiple choice. So A, episode 3, B, episode 10, C, episode 13, or D, episode 17.
Well, I know it was definitely early on, but I don't think it was that early on. So I'm going to guess 17. Is that
It was
correct?
actually episode 3. Was the very
Episode
first.
3.
Yeah, because you and I had
Wow.
recorded 7 episodes and launched the podcast with those 7 episodes, and that was episode 3. And the first thing we talked about was a Darth Vader wax warmer from Cincy on that
Oh my
episode.
goodness, that is fantastic. And you know, I use that thing every single day.
I know.
It's in my bedroom. And I seriously use that every single day. It's a staple in my house.
Yeah, it's funny because it's this is an episode that a lot of our listeners like, and then another core skip because it's just not like content discussion so much,
Mhm, mhm.
but it has been a very important part of the podcast through these first 1,000 episodes. I mean, we do 12 of them every single year, and we come back, we talk about these things and how we've been using them and what it was like to get them, and even a bunch of people have reached out to us about this 1,000th episode, and the Nerf Herder company, I know on Instagram, was thanking us for supporting the small businesses that we do through World Between Worlds. So I mean, it's not an inconsequential thing. This is, and I've had people reach out to me and tell me how much that they enjoy these, and they shop at the same places, or they hadn't been aware of a product, or they knew it was coming, they didn't know it was available, but you pointed it out in one of these episodes, and there they are.
Oh, yes, Melissa from the Nerf Herder Co. I saw that. That's awesome. And you know, it's as you said, it's just been so great to interview and highlight a lot of these small businesses. And
Mhm.
it is a little off the beaten path from, your typical toy collecting or that type of thing, which of course is still an amazing thing, but it's more of that, like you said, just those everyday products that are fandom based. And I've really appreciated being able to do that little niche of Star Wars fandom that we've been able to do. And I know a lot of those guests that we've had, those small business guests, have gone on to recommend us and we them, and it's just been kind of a mutual love kind of thing, which I adore.
Indeed, indeed. Do you have a favorite product that you've highlighted on the show that you've acquired? I mean,
Oh
that's like
gosh.
asking you your favorite child. I realize that, but is there one that stands out at the moment?
Well, it's funny because we just did my favorite things for New Year's resolution sorts of
Hmm.
things, and I had mentioned that Death Star Slam Ball, and
Hmm.
that continues to be one of my favorite things just because it's so different, that and the Han Solo yoga mat is hilarious. But, quite honestly, I just love the everyday things that I've been able to use. Those Headley and Bennett knives, the
Hmm.
Mandalorian set of knives, and the Ahsoka apron that you got me for Christmas one year is something else that I use every single day as well. So, there's things like that that just enrich my life as a Star Wars fan that aren't just things that I wear or have. They're actually things that I pick up and are just part of my Star Wars identity. So that's something that I've really appreciated. That's for sure. Do you have something, besides socks, of course?
Oh, I was gonna say socks is what I was gonna lead off with. Yeah, I mean, I've got a drawer full of Star Wars socks, and my wife has spoiled me with that over the years, and that's been fun. Plenty of T-shirts and the like. I was gonna bring up Headley and Bennett, both their knives and the aprons. There, I mean, I use those knives all the time, and then I know I've talked about it a lot over the last several months, but those ice molds, the Darth
Mhm.
Vader and Stormtrooper helmet ice molds, I've really enjoyed using those in cocktails and the like, and I use them at least once or twice a week. So there's things that are I'm not thinking of right off the top of my head, but that's been a valuable resource on our show.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Question number 2. This is not multiple choice. What was the first novel we ever reviewed on Podcast Stardust?
Ooh, I'm going to guess, was it A New Dawn by
No,
John Jackson Miller?
no,
No?
that preceded the podcast. That was out back in 2014, I believe.
Okay.
Um, so you want to take a second guess? I don't think you're going
Mm,
to get this, but I was surprised to see the answer.
okay. I'm going to guess then Lost Stars by Claudia Gray.
Nope, that also precedes the podcast. So the
Darn.
answer is Resistance Reborn by Rebecca Roanhorse.
Oh,
And we
really?
discussed our first novel review did not happen until episode 62.
Okay.
Now, here's what's interesting about that is she is writing Reign of the Empire, Edge of the Abyss, which comes out later this year. And I know we're both
Yes,
very looking forward to that as the follow-up to Reign of the Empire, Mask of Fear, which we've
indeed.
mentioned probably 100 times since we talked about it last year.
Yes. I would love to know exactly how many times we've referenced that book because it's definitely been part of our collective psyche on the podcast, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's been very influential. Here's a follow-up question. How many novels, in addition to Reign of the Empire, Age of Abyss, have we covered in an episode, been the subject of an episode on the podcast?
So, how many books have we covered? Oh my goodness. I'm sitting here looking at my bookshelf
Mhm.
and I'm going to
Let me
guess.
give you some caveats to this.
Okay.
These are books about Star Wars, so not just novels. I may have said novels, but books about Star Wars because
So these can also be like the manga and things like that.
I'm not including the manga.
Okay.
There is at least one book that is nonfiction that I'm including in this total.
Ah, okay.
Mhm.
So let's see. I'm gonna guess 76.
That's a little high. The actual answer is after Resistance Reborn, we have covered an additional 52 books about Star Wars.
52. Okay.
Yeah.
That's not too really, I mean, I know it's like 20 something off the mark, but like I said, as I'm sitting here, I have a couple of new bookshelves actually because I've just been in the
Yeah.
process of reorganizing my office and there are so many books as I'm sitting here looking at it that I'm like, we've covered that one, we've covered that one. And so yeah, 52. That's enough for one per week in a year. That's
Right.
incredible.
Well, it's about one every 20 episodes at this point.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
And
Do you have, like, favorite books that we've done?
I was going to ask you that. And I've been thinking about it ever since. Um, Let me think about that.
Well, I have my list if you wanna think about yours while I'm going over mine, if you'd
Yeah, go
like.
ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so I've been thinking about this, so I kinda came up with, like, a Mount Rushmore of the Star Wars novels that we've
Hmm.
discussed, and so what I was kind of looking through is things like the stuff that we love the most, myth
Yeah.
building, emotional storytelling, deep character work, and just stories that expand the galaxy in meaningful ways. So the ones that I picked are sort of all over the place, but definitely, of course, The Mask of Fear by Alexander Freed, as we said,
Yeah.
that one we've referenced like a bazillion times. Light of the Jedi by Charles Soule, because of course
Hmm.
that kicked off the entire High Republic era. Dark Disciple by
We
Christy
have actually not
Golden.
covered that on this podcast.
Dark Disciple? Oh, that was Starship Sabers and Scoundrels, wasn't
Yeah, it
it?
was.
That was way back in the day then. We
Mhm.
need to do that one again. All
That's
right.
I'm glad you mentioned that because when I saw that, when I put this list together, I was like, we are definitely reading that sometime this year.
Yes.
We have a
Yes.
bunch of holes in the publishing calendar for this year because it's just not as intense as it's been in years past. So I was like, I got to make a note to Jay. We got to cover either that or after we're done with Darth Bane Path of Destruction, we need to make that the next book club book.
I like that idea. I like
Yeah.
that idea a lot.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna replace that one then with actually, this was my honorable mention,
Mhm.
Rise of the Red Blade. For me, that
Yeah.
book about the Inquisitorius was just everything. But I think I'm a little biased because, of course, I cosplay the fourth sister. So there was that. But Brotherhood by Mike Chen was another one. And then just recently, we started doing Darth Bane Path of Destruction, which has garnered a lot of interest, and I'm loving that. So I had to put that one in there, but there's just so many, especially with all of the High Republic stuff. I mean, we could put all of the Thrawn novels as kind of one, sort
Mhm.
of thing. So yeah, it's so hard to pick, but those are just my quick hits, I guess, from across the way. But what are some of yours?
Well, I should also clarify this total that I gave you, this 53 books that we've covered in here, also includes exclusive audio dramas that later were published as books. But so I'm thinking Dr. Afra. That's one we
Ah,
covered here way back in
mhm.
episode 147. That was one of my favorites. I was looking at the High Republic is a huge portion of this list. And I was like trying to figure out what my favorite High Republic book was. And I made myself crazy. So I quit trying to figure it out. But it's likely one of the Kevin Scott or Charles Soule's books.
Mm,
And, Light of the Jedi, Trials of the Jedi by Kevin Scott, and then the various books by Kevin Scott. And of course, he did the comics. I didn't even bother trying to count up the comics because there's a lot and they're all over the place. And we kind of do stuff that captures our fancy rather than trying to be completists, unlike the novels where there's a handful from the past 6 years that we have not covered here, but there's only so much time in the month. But at any rate, uh,
indeed.
yeah, but I mean, the High Republic was a huge portion of this, especially since it was supposed to come out in 2020, but then COVID hit and it got pushed back to 2021. And it was one of those things that helped us get us through the pandemic,
Mhm.
especially back in phase one. And then we just were eager for every additional entry into that series. And so I'm big on that. I'm big on all the authors that they brought into the High Republic. Just looking down the list, I'm seeing a lot of good books, a few misses along the way. I wasn't terribly high on the Mace Window book, The Glass Abyss that came out. I'm trying to also think. I had high hopes for Ronin, but that was not high. That didn't end up being a high on my list when everything was done. What else out there?
Well,
Hmm.
while you're thinking about it, another one
Mhm.
that comes to mind that I loved being able to revisit was Star by Star, which was the
Yeah.
Yuzhan Vong book,
Mhm.
from the Legends, and of course, I got to revisit my girl Tahiri Vela in that one, so that was a big win for
We
me.
did the 3-episode arc around that book. We did a
Yes.
Yuzong Vong episode, we did the Star Wars Star, and then we did a Tahiri Vela focus episode
Mhm.
around that.
So
Um,
fun.
yeah, trying to think here. Can you guess which book we spent the most time discussing?
Probably The Mask of Fear by Alexander Freed.
Okay, let me rephrase. Can you guess which book we devoted the most episodes to?
That we both gosh, I don't know. Is
From a
it the
certain
What If
point of view,
books?
Return of the Jedi.
Okay, okay, I was gonna though I that's why I said what if books, yeah, the certain point of view. Okay, that's not
Yeah,
surprising to me. Yeah, because those were huge. We had to do those in segments.
right, right. Yeah, I mean, I think it was 7 total episodes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, 7 episodes we spent on that. Starting at episode 621, and then it was every few episodes. Did not end till episode 657 because
That makes sense, though.
yeah, I mean, the earlier, from a certain point of view, A New Hope came out when we were doing Starship Sabers and Scoundrels, and so we didn't review that on. But we did, from a certain point of view, Empire Strikes Back. We divided that one up into 3 episodes. But uh, yeah, we just took our time with Return of the Jedi and really
Mhm.
got into the stories. I can't remember exactly why we chose to do it that way, but we really, I think the difference was in Empire Strikes Back, we didn't discuss every single story. But Return of the Jedi, we did.
Uh-huh.
We really highlighted some of our favorites there. Yeah, but I'm with you. Brotherhood was a fantastic one. Mike Chen hasn't done a whole ton of Star Wars stuff yet, but that was great. My copy of his Outlaws tie-in book showed up the other day, And I've got another book I need to finish first, and then I'm going to dive into that. I cannot wait for that.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I think I'm 7 chapters in right now
All
on
right,
that one.
okay, yeah. Then Timothy Zahn came back to Star Wars, and he wrote 6 Thrawn books that we've talked
Yep.
about here on the show, or 5 of them we talked about anyways on this show,
Yes, sir.
and so those have been interesting. We spent a lot of time on that. Um, we talked about a couple of the different Alphabet Squadron books that Alexander Freed wrote, which is funny because we weren't as high on those as we were Mask of Fear when it came down to
Well,
it.
and here's the thing, if you remember, I bugged out on those because
Yep.
I had things going on in my life, and I said, "You know what, Dennis? If you can find guests that can help you talk about those books,
Hmm.
go for it." And so that's how it worked because I started reading the first one, and then I think I did read the first one, and then I just couldn't get through the
I
other
think
ones,
you
and
actually
that's
got through the
okay.
second one. It was the third one that you couldn't finish.
Yeah,
And then so I
maybe.
ended up getting Joe Tavano, the editor in chief of Rutgers App,
Uh-huh.
the head of the podcast network here to
Yes.
come discuss it with me.
Yes, yeah.
So yeah, okay. Well, let's move on. We spent a lot of time here on
Yeah,
books,
books.
but question
We love
number
our books.
3: what episode began our rewatch of Star Wars Rebels? And this is multiple choice. A, episode 76, B, episode 104, C, episode 225, or D, episode 303.
Okay, I'm going to guess A, which was what, 74, you said?
76.
76, and the only reason is because I know when I was looking back at our different guests that we had on, I
Mm-hmm.
know Vanessa Marshall joined us to help us celebrate episode 100, and I have a feeling that we started doing our Rebels before that. Am I correct?
Uh, Good logic, but it was actually episode 104. So the answer is B, is
Really?
when we
So
started it. Yeah.
wow, okay, so we started very soon thereafter.
Right. And that still puts us in 2020. We started the podcast at the end of October 2019, and episode
Uh-huh.
100 was before episode or the year 2020 ended. It was one of those things. When we set up the podcast, we wanted to do 3 episodes a week, and we wanted to do it 3 episodes a week. And the goal, and this has not always worked out. The idea was to do something about 3 episodes of 30 to 40 minutes a piece, as opposed to doing a single episode that was an hour and a half long. That way our listeners could pick and choose the episodes they wanted to listen to. If they didn't want to hear Rebels, they didn't have to listen to it. They could just tune in for the news, or they could hear into our, Wednesday has kind of been like the feature of the week
Mhm. Mhm.
most times, unless we're doing something, we typically do Mondays for whatever series is out. But regardless, it just, after a while, it was like, we had a whole bunch of different discussion episodes. We had an episode about Darth Vader, an episode about Rogue One, 5 years later, and things like that, what it meant to have attachment and all these things. But it's hard to come up with those episodes on a week by week basis and do all the research you need in order to do them. And doing something like the Rebels rewatch fills a whole lot of time for us. And it was just so much fun when we dove into
Oh,
it.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. It's been amazing. And
Mhm.
speaking of guests as well, I have a trivia question for you. So
Sure.
we had 2 other guests, that are very noteworthy, I guess you could say. All of our guests have been. I mean, we've had so many great friends that have joined us, different podcasters from all over that have their own podcasts and things. And we've even joked that, there's the Gold Jacket Award for our podcast friends who have taken the time to
Mhm.
appear, on multiple shows. But, as far as, I mentioned Vanessa Marshall was celebrated, episode 100 with us, and then there's Catherine Tabor. Can
Mhm.
you guess
Episode
what
396.
okay.
That
You
was
beat me
question
to it.
10.
Well, darn. Okay, well, what about Lauren Mary Kim?
She
She was
did show up on episode 138, because that was question number
nice.
12 that I'd written.
Oh, goodness. Okay. Well, see, and here's part of what happens, and our listeners that have been with us for any length of time, we
Mhm.
know that after 1,000 episodes, I know we can read each other's Star Wars minds at this point,
Mhm.
which is both impressive and slightly terrifying. But
Yeah.
I mean, that's what's so much fun is because what started as a shared fandom is really turned into a partnership and a friendship. And
Oh,
that's
yeah.
just, I mean, aside from all the things that we've gotten a chance to do and just a quick aside. I mean, we had so many personal milestones along the way. I mean, our kids have grown up with this show, and on this show, we got a chance to experience Galaxy's Edge together with our families. And, one of my favorite memories is just being under the Millennium Falcon with our lightsabers and doing Smuggler's Run with, Beth and your boys, and then myself and Colby, and drinking blue milk, and, all the things. And none of that would have been able to happen if it hadn't been for this podcast. So I'm so grateful for that.
Hi, this is Vanessa Marshall, the voice of Hera Syndulla from Star Wars Rebels, wishing Jay and Dennis huge congratulations on 1,000 episodes of fully armed and operational podcasting on Podcast Stardust. Here's to many more missions. May the Force be with you always.
Indeed. Well, that'll lead me to skip all the way to question number 13.
Okay.
What episodes did we discuss our Star Wars Celebration Anaheim and Galaxy's Edge experience in?
I'm gonna have to guess. Let's see. That was back
Give me
in
a range.
2022.
Yeah.
So we're probably talking around episode 650 to 700, somewhere in there.
Actually, the first one was 421.
All the way
We
back then. Wow.
we broke up the experience of us being at Celebration into episodes 421 and 422. Then we had a couple additional episodes about the news that came out, and then we devoted a couple episodes to our experiencing Galaxy's Edge. So that time was episodes 421, 422, 424, 426, 427, and 429.
Nice. Well, I
Yeah,
hope our
that
listeners are
was
taking notes, because now they can go back and find these if they're interested.
well. Here's the thing: is that YouTube has them, RetroZap.com has them, but Spotify doesn't offer as many episodes as they used to anymore.
Come on, Spotify. They're starting to charge more money coming up this month too.
Yeah, they just increased my subscription price by $2. I couldn't believe it. I mean, it's
Mhm.
$2, but still, that the stuff adds up. But
Mhm.
yeah, while we're on the topic of Celebration, I mean, Celebration Anaheim was only the second time we'd seen each other.
Right?
Yeah, and we ended up doing, because I got there the day before Celebration and went to Disneyland and checked out Galaxy's Edge. It was my first time there. And then your flight had issues. And so
Ugh.
you ended up getting in a day late to the whole thing. And we met on the Celebration floor. Well, I say met. We,
Met
met
up.
up on the
Yes.
Celebration floor and did a whole bunch of stuff. I've got some great pictures of you in your Hera cosplay. And then, of course, we did a bunch of stuff during Celebration. And then after Celebration was over, we spent some time over at Galaxy's Edge. We got to do Rise of the Resistance. We got to do a really fun Smuggler's Run. I'll never forget you and I piloting the Millennium Falcon. I think I
Oh
was
gosh.
charge of left to right, and you were in charge of up to down. And I remember Hondo shouting at us about, you see the white boxes up there, because we were not going exactly where we were supposed to be. But
Oh, you were a great pilot. Me, not so much.
yeah, and we got a great picture of you and I dueling with our lightsabers in front of the
Yes.
Millennium Falcon after
So
we went to
great.
Sabi's workshop there. So
So
I'm
great.
one of the things that occurred to me this year is that with some of these episodes being so old and harder to find, as I'm just gonna have to start, especially in the weeks where we don't have the time to record new content, just putting out some of these vintage episodes
Great
from the
idea.
archive so
Mhm.
that we can just share them with our friends, because those are some of my favorites when getting to recap our experiences and talk about fun. Not only that, it was like, meeting up with Dan and Corey from Coffee with Kenobi, and Colby from the Colby cast, and Greg McLaughlin, Ross Holliman was there, writer,
Yep.
Alan
Raider
Voivod,
Waldron. Mhm.
Idiots Array guys, the folks from, Becca, um, just everybody, all of our podcasting friends that, you've heard on our show over the time, if you've been around long enough. That's the best part of Celebration. It's, you can get the news and you can watch all the people come out on stage, and yeah, it's fun to be in the room where it happens, to quote Leslie Odom from Hamilton. But
Nice.
but the best part is like all these guys that we listen to on their podcasts, and then we're on their podcasts and they're on our podcasts, and getting to sit down and have a drink with them, share a meal,
Mhm.
and just catch
Mhm.
up on, did you see this? Did you do that? And then talking about our family, you're talking about the family experiences and stuff like that, but that broader community that we get with it as well.
It's so true, and that's one of the things that I've truly treasured is the community that we've built, not just with fellow podcasters, but also just with people that listen to us that, it doesn't matter if it's fellow cosplayers that have kind of transitioned into also listening to our podcast because I met them through cosplay. I had one
Mhm.
specifically who said, I listen to your podcast every day on my commute to school. He was going to college. And that just meant so much. And that's the thing. I mean, just having people show up online in one of our podcast t shirts, which I know we're going to talk about,
Mhm.
people who make memes or posts on their social media pages featuring us. I mean, that's something I'm never going to take for granted. So, just the community that's been part of this journey has been so wonderful.
Indeed, indeed. Okay, so next question that I have on the trivia is we've been doing an annual movie rewatch that we break down into a monthly segment that talks about 10 to 15 minutes of the movie. This is a gimme. Which movie was our first feature movie in that series?
Our first feature movie,
Hmm.
it was Rogue One, wasn't it?
Nope. We started in 2020. Think about what movie was
I am
celebrating an anniversary
so
then.
bad at this. Empire Strikes Back.
That's
No, that was
correct.
oh, yeah, that because that would have been 1980. Yes, so that is
Yep.
correct. Okay.
Yep. Starting with
Yay.
episode 54, featuring the aforementioned Ryder Waldron as our first guest. And then we had 10 more episodes, and then you and I did a wrap up episode at the end of the year. But then the following movies we did were Rogue One in 2021, Attack of the Clones in 2022, Return of the Jedi 2023, The Phantom Menace in 2024, Revenge of the Sith in 2025, and we are currently working on The Force Awakens this year. But it was a great segue here from what we were just talking about with Celebration, is that this has given us an opportunity to talk to so many of our friends, and it's one of the more popular things that we put out is this movie
Truly.
series. Is that
Mhm, mhm.
we usually get a spike in listenership and the downloads every time we have one of these episodes out.
Well, one of the things I think about it is it's kind of bingeable, if it's something that is very resonating for a listener that,
Mhm.
you can go back through and say, "Oh, okay, well, if I wanna listen to these 4 episodes that they did," and they're really evergreen too, so they never are dated in terms of, like a news story or something like that. So it's something that I think that listeners enjoy going back to. And it's the same thing with the books too.
Mhm.
But then there's also a certain camaraderie that goes along with each of those segments and those deep dives. Like we always say, it's amazing how much we can cover of a 10-minute segment of a movie in these
Yeah.
episodes because they tend to be about an hour long, if not longer. And
Oh,
it
they're
always
always the longest episodes of the month.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, every time. In fact, it was this episode we just recorded. The first one of Force Awakens was over an hour and a half long. I did not
Mhm.
expect that at all when we recorded. Might have been our longest episode ever, but all of our longest episodes are one of these movie discussions episodes.
That or World Between Worlds, one of the 2.
Those typically cap out at under an hour. So
Mhm,
yeah, they're up there, but they don't crack the top five when
mhm.
at the end of the day. So
Hmm.
Um, but I enjoy those, and we always get a lot of feedback, and it's just a great opportunity. We get into such a flow with our guests on those, diving into all the details, the things we saw in the background, the trivia that comes around these things, and the theories that people have. And when you're talking about an entire 2-hour movie in a 30 to 1 hour segment of a podcast, there's a lot you can't discuss. But when you talk about 10 to 15 minutes, you can really get into the nitty gritty on things.
Definitely. And
Yeah,
that's been so fun.
indeed. All right. Question number 5, and I don't think this one's going to generate a whole lot of discussion, but I just want to throw a question like this in there. The episode "Your Name Will Be Legendary" was about what? A, the Rise of Skywalker teaser trailer. B, an episode of Star Wars Resistance. C, an upcoming book release. Or D, a new trailer for The Mandalorian.
Well, that was a Fennec Shand quote. "Your
Very good.
name will be legendary."
Yep.
So, what are my choices again?
That was D. You got it.
Okay. Because I was thinking to myself, okay, that has to be. I was thinking Book of Boba Fett, but Mandalorian. Okay.
All
Okay.
right. Well, let me ask you the next question, and this will get us that kind of leads into what I was going to bring up next. Question 6. Our review of the first episode of The Mandalorian was in which episode? A, episode 7, B, episode 17, C, episode 22, or D, episode 25?
17.
Very good. You're doing a good
Yay.
job.
Okay. I knew it was so early on because I just remember that was just the cultural explosion that was The Mandalorian. And we were so fortunate that we had such a great, ability to curate episodes from the series, and just wow, the Baby Yoda moment in the first episode just was wow, legendary in and of itself. That's for sure.
That was a big boon for the podcast, having a
Oh
show that
yeah.
was covering all the episodes. Disney Plus was brand new. The Mandalorian came out on day one of the platform. And one of the things that we made sure to happen was the podcast was up and going before Disney Plus and The Mandalorian debuted, so that we were going to be able to cover it. And we got the last movie, The Rise of Skywalker, in theaters at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
If
We
I
did.
had to do it all over again, I would not have released 7 episodes that had like 2 episodes of Star Wars Resistance in it, because look, it was not the worst show, but it was also not the best show, but nobody cared when it came to our listenership for that show. And, we had fun talking about Kaz and his antics and the like, and sometimes we get annoyed with how slapstick it could be. But
Mm-hmm.
it was, once we had The Mandalorian going and we had all that Rise of Skywalker conversation, is when the show really started to soar.
Oh, for sure. And it's funny because I have that in our notes, even the things that didn't resonate with us, we kind of felt like we had to plow through like resistance.
Yeah.
We still had so much fun with those, but we really did have so much, fortunate type of podcasting when it comes to all of those Disney Plus shows. Because as you mentioned, The Mandalorian, we had Book of Boba Fett, we had the Bad Batch, Ahsoka series, so much groundbreaking Star Wars, Skeleton Crew, all the things. And so it's definitely given us a lot to talk about. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
Season 7 of the Clone Wars came out.
Oh my goodness,
That was
yes.
because, also remember, in 2019, right before the show started, you and I, the first time we met was at the Star Wars Celebration in Chicago.
Yes.
And we got to see the trailer for The Rise of Skywalker. We got the panel on The Mandalorian, and we were teased with a brand new season of the Clone Wars. That might have been like the most impactful celebration that I can remember for stuff that they announced, and then it actually happened
Indeed.
afterwards, because since then they not exactly been nailing it with their announcements at Star Wars Celebration. But I'm just looking at things. We talked about that. I neglected to mark down when we started covering season 7 of the Clone Wars, but the Bad Batch was episode 253, Visions Volume 1 317, The Book of Boba Fett 356, Obi-Wan Kenobi 423, Andor season 1 episode 470, Tales of the Jedi 487, Bad Batch season 2 513, The Mandalorian season 3 544, Visions Volume 2 579, Ahsoka episode 16, and on and on and on. You can see it's like every 30 or 40 episodes. For so long, we had a brand new series or a new season of a series, brand new content to talk about. And that's just been so exciting for the last 6.25 years.
Oh, definitely. We've been so fortunate. But you're right. 2019 was just ripe with the what's on the horizon kind of announcements. And we've gotten a few of those, but not as much. I mean, that was definitely the boon of Star Wars gifting at that point.
Yeah, but it's one of the things I've been touching on for the last year, and is that I kind of feel like we're in a similar place right now, because we actually have movies that are done filming, that are in post-production. We got The Mandalorian and Grogu coming out in May. We've got Starfighter coming out a year after that. We have season 2 of Ahsoka we know is done filming and is coming out. We're waiting Maul, Shadowhunter. I'm excited for all these properties.
Oh, for sure.
And it kind of blows my mind. I mean, they had Star Wars Celebration Japan. We couldn't go. That's hard to get to for Japan. That's something you have to. And I get it. They want to have celebrations in different parts of the world, but that's on. You'd almost want them to like announce years in advance so that people could really save up and make it happen. And
Right.
even then, it's still a challenge. But I'd
Mhm.
love to have had a celebration here to be, you know, I've had bad luck with the celebrations I've been to getting into the main room where the big panels happen. But even if you aren't, there's always such a buzz around celebration when these things have been announced and everyone starts talking about, hey, did you hear that? What did you think about it? Because we all see the video at some point. That's the other thing that's been kind of a downside is that after Star Wars Celebration Chicago, they quit streaming those main stage
Yes.
panels to the
I
rest of the
know.
floor and to the people at home on that.
Right.
And I didn't get to go to Star Wars Celebration Anaheim in 2015, but I remember sitting in my office, clearing my schedule for the day, and locking the door at work and watching the Force Awakens panel and just geeking out for a couple, for an hour. And then you get to see that first full length trailer when Harrison Ford comes, on the screen and says, Chewie, we're home. And then you see the Millennium Falcon blast off. That's what I want again. And my intent is to be at Star Wars Celebration LA next year. But if I can't, and if I do, I will hope everyone at home that can't make it gets to indulge in that again.
Yes, bring that back. And
Yeah.
very good Harrison Ford impersonation, by the way. That was
Oh, thank you.
impressive. Most impressive.
Kind of helps that my wife was watching Shrinking season 3 before I came up here to record. But
Perfect.
yeah, of all those shows, of all those Disney Plus exclusives that have come out, do you have a favorite?
Oh, goodness. That's so hard. I mean, Andor, we've just talked about this. Andor is just epic storytelling as far as Star Wars goes. And I loved having season 7 of the Clone Wars because I am such a huge fan, and I know I've said this a bazillion times, but when Clone Wars was originally canceled, I literally wept.
Mhm.
So if you've heard that story before, sorry you're hearing it again, but so getting Clone Wars back was just amazing. And again, we've talked about this before too. It's just one of those things that sometimes the fans being really, really loud can make a difference. And that's what, really helped to bring the Clone Wars back. But I mean, there's just so much, like I mentioned, The Mandalorian is just this amazing water cooler kind of show. Really broke a lot of ground. I've loved all of the animation. I know this is such a cop out, but those are just some of my favorites. And of course the Ahsoka series as well. And I'm excited to see where that one's gonna go. And I love the Book of Boba Fett. I know that
Yeah.
didn't garner as much, type of favoritism from the fans, but our cup is really runneth over with Star Wars goodness. And it's
Yeah.
really hard to pick. But do you have a favorite?
Easily the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian, I think.
Mhm.
That gives me the most nostalgic feeling for the original trilogy of Star Wars
Mhm.
and the prequel trilogy. I mean, the sequel trilogy is fine. I don't have an issue with it. I enjoy those movies. I watch them all the time. But the we are Gen X original trilogy, first generation Star Wars fans, and
We
those,
are.
yeah, and The Mandalorian reminds me of those movies the most.
Mhm.
And it, I started my rewatch of The Mandalorian this past week in order to get ready for Mandalorian and Grogu coming out this
Oh,
May.
yeah.
And a lot of Star Wars I put on because I've seen it so often. It's on in the background while I'm doing a lot of other things, but I found myself really paying rapt attention to that this time around, and I was excited to watch those episodes again. So,
I
yeah,
need to do that before the movie comes out, truly,
yeah,
just to, re-up the excitement and also to remind myself of all the amazing adventures that they've had.
yeah. Well, you and I will probably be doing some Mandalorian seasonal discussion between now and the movie gets released to kind of get
Yay.
back up to speed. So,
Looking forward.
okay. But speaking of the Mandalorian, and I've making this question brought this question because it is such a touchstone moment from the past 6.5 quarter years in Star Wars. In which episode of Podcast Stardust did we discuss Chapter 16 of The Mandalorian, which was titled "The Rescue," in which Luke Skywalker makes an appearance? A, episode 122, B, episode 154, C, 196, or D, 227?
I'm gonna guess 196.
Wow, you're really good at this. It's 3 in a row
Ooh,
that you've got.
wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it was early 2021. It was the season 2 finale of The Mandalorian. And one of the reasons I brought it up is because, I mean, people were weeping about seeing
Mhm.
Luke Skywalker again.
Yes.
And Filoni and company were so smart that all of the concept art that they developed it had Plo Koon as a Jedi that returned. And then they
Right. Oh, I
completely
forgot
psyched
about that.
everybody out by having Mark Hamill and a different actor come in so they can do the CGI and the mocap and everything else that they need to do to replicate Luke Skywalker showing up and just destroying all those Dark Troopers.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, it was so emotional because, as you
Mhm.
just pointed out, I mean, we're talking original trilogy, legacy character coming to life in this way. And it was, yeah, it really hit in all the feels. That's for sure.
Mhm. Yeah, fantastic piece of Star Wars content.
Indeed.
All right, question 8. In which episode did we first review The Rise of Skywalker? A, episode 32, B, episode 39, C, episode 44, or D, episode 50?
Let's see. Okay, so that was I know that came out 2019, and so that is right after we got started. So I'm gonna say B.
Yeah, very good. Episode
Woo,
39, B.
39. My
Yeah, we
age,
broke
as I
we
always
broke
say.
down our initial review into 2 parts. Second part came out in episode 42, immediately followed by our conclusion of our coverage for season 1 of The Mandalorian, which is episode 43. And then episode 45, we had a discussion that focused on the Force as it is portrayed in The Rise of Skywalker. So,
Oh, I love that.
yeah.
It's so great going down memory lane because with all you have such a great memory, and I've always, said that about you. You have the brains of the podcast here. I'm just kind of along for the ride, but it's fun to be able to say, "Oh, yeah, we did do that." That's so much fun.
Well, thank you for the compliment, but you you bring a lot to this show. Don't discount yourself.
Oh, I'm not.
You know,
I'm just saying you have a better memory. Ha
oh,
ha
okay.
ha.
So, yeah, when we started the podcast in 2019, I never would have guessed that The Rise of Skywalker was the only movie
Oh
new
my
to
goodness.
theaters that you and I were to discuss for the first 6 plus years of the podcast. Because they had just been putting out at least once a year. I mean, 2019 had
Mhm.
2 movies. It had Solo
Mhm.
and The Rise of Skywalker. And there was nothing announced for 2020 or 20, but we always felt like an announcement was imminent. Ryan Johnson had a trilogy that was announced. There was all these other rumblings of things that were going to happen, but then all of a sudden they just stopped. And now finally, not quite 7 years later, we're going to get another movie. It's just
Mhm.
that blows my mind because we went from having Revenge of the Sith in 2005 to not getting a movie for 10 years for The Force Awakens. And it kind of seemed like that was never going to happen again. And then it almost happened again after The
I
Rise of Skywalker.
know. And it's insane how many years have elapsed since then. And
Mhm.
like you said, we've been kind of teased ever since with, "Oh, this could happen, this could happen." It just continues to not happen, but we've got 2 now with Mandalorian and Grogu and then Starfighter that we can look
Mhm.
forward to, that we know for sure.
All right. This question I put in here because I just thought it was fun the way it turned out. And I probably just spoiled the answer that way. But at any rate, which episode featured our review of the first episode of season 7 of The Clone Wars? A, episode 66, B, episode 85, C, episode 103, or D, episode 124?
It's gotta be 66, right?
Yes, it was, in fact. So,
Order
mhm,
66, that's just too perfect.
it was. It was indeed. All right. And then we
Love
already
that.
talked about Vanessa Marshall showing up on episode 100. This one is just kind of fun because I pulled out all the milestone episodes that were a multiple of 100. And so I thought I'd see if you could remember what we talked about on these. Episode 200. What was the topic?
Ooh, okay, so episode 200, where were we at that point in time? So, it would have to have been
Let me give you a hint.
it was a novel, wasn't it?
It was nothing that was current at the time,
Nothing that was current at the time.
but it was a piece of content.
Was that one of the, Legends books, like Star by Star or something of that nature?
Well, we still haven't discussed Star by Star on the podcast, but it
Okay.
was episode 1 of season 2 of Rebels, The Siege of Lothal,
Okay.
part 1.
Okay. Great.
Okay. Episode 300. Any guesses what we talked about then?
Oh, goodness. I'm so bad at this. See, I was in such a role, and now I'm not.
Well, these
So
aren't
what was
multiple
the
choice.
date? Let me
I have
ask.
no idea.
Okay. I'm trying
Here's
to,
the
like,
thing. It
think
was
of
somewhere in
where
the
we were.
400s that I started putting in my master document of show notes the actual date that the episode was going to appear on. But I didn't do that for years.
Okay, so I'm just going to guess that it was an episode of World Between Worlds.
It was actually part 8 of our Rogue One series.
Nice.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay.
Episode 400. Any guesses?
Um,
If you want a hint, I can give you a hint.
yes, please.
This is something that we discussed several dozen times over the past couple of years.
Attachment.
No. Specific type of content.
Something with the High Republic.
Yes, it was the High Republic Phase 1 overview.
All right. Wow, the
Episode 500
overview.
was
Woo.
celebrating 500 episodes. Episode 600 was a bunch of top 6 lists that we did with various topics on Star Wars. Any
Nice.
guesses on what episode 700 was?
Can you give me a hint?
It was it had something to do with content on Disney Plus.
Okay, so let's see, 700 content on Disney Plus, something with the Bad Batch.
Yeah, absolutely. It was episode
Woo!
5 from season 3 of The Bad Batch, which is called The Return.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Not too bad. Not too bad of a
Yep.
guess.
Episode 800, we were celebrating 5 years of the podcast and 800 episodes at the same time. And then, can you guess what episode 900 was?
900.
Something we've talked about a lot in the past year.
Revenge of the Sith.
No. Something that we referenced a lot in the past year in a bunch of different contexts. Jay, you were talking about this at the beginning of the episode. Come on.
Oh, was I? Oh,
Yes.
goodness gracious. I give up.
You're going to smack yourself. Reign of
Okay.
Empire, Mask of Fear.
Oh, wow. Okay, that was 900?
That was part 2 of our discussion. We
Okay.
talked so much about that book, we split up into 2 parts.
Okay. Okay. Wow, I didn't realize that was 100 episodes ago, though.
It
Yeah. Just seems like yesterday.
We already covered this, but question 12 was what episode featured a discussion with Nora and Mary Kim, and that was episode 138.
138.
And we talked to her as the bumper that we frequently play suggests about her being the stunt double for the armorer in The Mandalorian and the motion capture artist for Ahsoka in season 7 of the Clone Wars. So, and of course,
Such a great person. She's just so wonderful.
Indeed.
Love her.
Hey, this is Catherine Tabor, Senator Padme Amidala from Star Wars The Clone Wars, wishing Jay and Dennis a big congratulations on 1,000 episodes of Podcast Stardust. Whoa, that's a lot of stardust. Most impressive.
All right. So we put out the request for questions. A lot of them are things that we got are things we already discussed here. So I appreciate everyone providing those, but that was kind of part of the framework for this episode already. We did get this email from Joe's Woods. He's a follower of ours on your YouTube. He did say, "Hi, Dennis and Jay. I have a couple questions that might be suitable for your upcoming Ask Us Anything episode. Imagine you find yourselves with 5 or 6 hours and nothing to do. Which 2 Star Wars movies would you watch?" His answer is, for my time, it would be Empire Strikes Back and Rogue One. But which ones would you watch, Jay?
Oh gosh, this is going to be such a cop-out answer, but it truly depends on my mood. And that's such a thing that I do with Star Wars in general anymore, is that it's whatever I'm searching for at the time. And I've shared this a bazillion times, things like, okay, Attack of the Clones is something I always watch when I'm putting up my Christmas tree, those types of things. But I think if it's something that I'm looking for comfort Star Wars, oh goodness, if I'm feeling nostalgic, I'm definitely going to put in A New Hope, and cue that one up, because that one is obviously the movie that started it all. And that one has the most nostalgia factor and just the fact that it was the first movie that I ever saw in theaters when I was just a youngling myself back in the late 1970s. And then, if I'm thinking trilogy-wise, prequel trilogy, it's probably gonna be Revenge of the Sith if I'm just throwing one on. But Rogue One is always, for me as well, one of those movies that I just never get tired of watching, and I always love going back to that one. But, what about you?
Yeah, it's hard to answer this question because I feel like his answer here, Empire Strikes Back and Rogue One, those are two of my very favorite movies, Star Wars movies. They may be one and two, given on the day. I am very drawn to Return of the Jedi. That was a movie that came out when I was in third grade. I remember it. I remember that's the first movie I was really kind of cognizant of the hype leading up to it. I remember going to Target and the toy store and seeing all the action figures on the shelves before I got to see the movie. I read the book, the Scholastic Book Fair book, a picture book of the
Yeah.
movie before I actually went and saw the movie. But doing my own theory crafting before that movie came out, that was like the first time I think I remember I was mature enough to do those things. And so I have this draw to that movie for that reason. I mean, A New Hope was the first movie I ever saw in theaters. And I remember being aware that Empire Strikes Back was coming out and then going to see that. But Return of the Jedi, I remember was like the first time I was like really, really super excited for a movie being in
Mhm.
theaters. And I still have that tug for that one. And similarly, The Force Awakens, just the excitement and the community I remember experiencing leading up to those movies, that a lot of times I throw those two in there just because I remember the hype and I remember the community and I remember, like when I was in third grade, I remember the conversations on the playground. And as an adult, I remember all the online conversations and all the friends I made and all the podcasts I listened to waiting for The Force Awakens. And sometimes I just want that pick me up. And so
Mhm.
regardless of how good those other movies are, I mean, there's no denying, as far as I'm concerned, The Empire Strikes Back is by far the best Star Wars movie that's out there. But sometimes it just isn't my favorite. And
Mhm.
there's something about watching Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens that just makes me happy and reminds me of some really fun times. So I think
Oh,
those two
yeah.
are going to
I
be
love that
my favorite.
answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking, like, emotional impact, I
Mhm.
mean, honestly, if we're talking that, it would have to be The Phantom Menace for me, just because I remember sitting there in the theater with my niece who is now 33 and my nephew who has since passed away, but I was also pregnant with my first child who is now expecting his first child. So,
Yeah.
that is for me huge because growing up with Star Wars and the original trilogy and then seeing that movie for the first time in theaters and just the dun 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 dun, Sebulba's concert.
You didn't have to tell me what that sound
Oh,
effect was. As soon as you did it, I knew it was. I love
of
that.
course. I mean, come on. So we should have an episode where we just do just nothing but effects and see if we can guess it from each other, you know? Like, that kind of trivia. Dong. Okay,
Yeah,
what's
you're
that
talking
one?
about the seismic charge right there. Okay, yeah. Yes, we could do that.
That would be fun.
Maybe part of an episode. I don't know that I could do that for an entire hour, but we'll see.
Let us
Um,
know what you think, listeners. Would you like to
yeah.
hear us do that?
Okay, so his second question is, now imagine you are in college or at least college age. Which Star Wars character would you most want for a roommate? And his
Oh.
answers are, I'd choose Ahsoka or Quinlan Voss. I bet either one would be up for lots of fun adventuring when time permitted.
Oh my gosh, yeah, Quinlan Voss would be amazing, but he would also be a little unreliable, as we just
Hmm.
talked about, he's kind of on his own time when it comes to things, that's for sure.
Yeah, I
Oh,
feel like
boy.
I'd be talking to the dorm monitor a lot about Quinlan if that was my roommate.
Oh gosh, okay, well, my first, like, knee-jerk reaction would have to be Padme,
Mm.
because, I mean, come on, she's responsible, she's diplomatic, she's organized. I mean, heck, she's probably got a shared Google Calendar for chores, already. But she's also fun. I think she could be really spontaneous. And, she knows how to protect herself, but she can also be a bit adventurous at times. So I guess that's probably my first reaction. But okay, so here's something that's kind of like, how would I put this? She's somebody that you wouldn't expect, but I'm gonna say it anyways, and I have a reason. Asajj Ventress.
I knew you were going to say that. As soon as you, I
Really?
knew. Yes, I did. Go on.
And again, here we are reading each other's minds, which is impressive and also terrifying. So, all right, so here's why. I feel like she would be unlikely to create drama because if she views someone as being capable, then she's going to kind of stay out of their hair. So, if anything, I think we would have this kind of quiet mutual respect dynamic where words are kind of unnecessary. And I personally would appreciate that because I need my space sometimes. I always say that I'm an extroverted introvert. So I need time to decompress from people. And I feel like she would know where to draw the line, in a conversation. She's not clingy. She can
Yeah,
handle herself, her own problems. And I feel like once we got close, if I'm her person, nobody's messing with me. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
she's very no nonsense.
Yeah,
So I can see that.
exactly. So somebody ticks her off and be like upstairs neighbor, suddenly
Mhm.
moves out. Coincidence? I think not.
Right. Right. So
What
my
about
answer
you?
to this question is Obi-Wan Kenobi. And here's why.
Mm, mhm.
Because I don't need a party hard roommate. I need someone that Sunday night through Friday afternoon is going to be no nonsense, get the work done, focus on what needs to be done. But then on Friday and Saturday night, they're up for going to the bar and getting
Oh,
a
yeah,
shot. And
totally.
that's totally Obi-Wan. He knows where the best place to drink in Mos Eisley is and where, the bars are like in Coruscant and stuff like that. And he's not going to overdo it. I'm never going to have to carry that guy home. So I think,
True.
I think that's my answer to that question.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
And, that Obi-Wan's always going for the drink, "Where are you
Hmm.
going?" "Going to get a drink."
Hmm.
Always love it.
So we also got a question from Trisha, who you can find on Instagram, sporting her Podcast Stardust t-shirt while she's reading a copy of Darth Bane. Thank you so much,
Love
Trisha. We
that. That
appreciate your
was
support.
so cool.
It was
So
very cool. I really love that. That was such an awesome image. And I want to see more people with their copies of the books. Greg Cass also showed
yes.
us his copy of his book, and hoping to get him back on the podcast to do some Star Wars books with us soon. But she'd asked, what have been some of your favorite episodes and topics of the podcast? Well, I think we've kind of covered that over the course of the discussion. But her second question was, is there anything significant in the Star Wars universe that is 1,000? You only made it to 900 years is one thing she's referring to. So we do this from time to time when we have a milestone episode number, trying to find things that correspond to that. If you put 1,000 either spelled out or in numerical form into Wikipedia, you're going to get dozens and dozens and dozens of entries. And we could do an entire podcast on that and it wouldn't be terribly interesting. So I picked out some of the top ones. And of course, the first thing that came to my mind, I didn't even have to look at the Wikipedia, was Obi-Wan's quote from A New Hope: "For over 1,000 generations, the Jedi Knights were the guardians of peace and justice in the Old Republic, before the Dark Times, before the Empire."
For the
So
Empire.
for the Empire. And
Yes.
the next one, and this came to mind, was the Night of 1,000 Tears. And that was the
That's the
night.
one that hit me first.
Really? Okay.
Yep. Mhm.
Yeah, that was the night the Empire massacred the Mandalorians during the Great Purge of Mandalore, as seen in pieces during The Mandalorian. It was first mentioned in Chapter 8 during Season 1 of The Mandalorian, when Moff Gideon showed up. And then we got a first flashback to it during Chapter 5 of the Book of Boba Fett. And we also got some flashbacks to it in Chapter 17 of The Mandalorian as well.
Nice.
And then the third big one that came up was the Mystery of 1,000 Moons, which is episode 18 of season 1 of the Clone Wars. Anakin and Obi-Wan end up going to the planet of Iago to look for a Riska root, which they need to make the antidote for the blue shadow virus. And then Jabo there, who has reprogrammed a bunch of battle droids, but there's literally hundreds of moons around Iago, and of course that whole trap that's been set up. It's, you can get there, but you can never leave. Kind of like the Eagles in Hotel California.
Yeah.
But at any rate,
Are you an angel?
exactly. And then the final reference I have is the Star Speeder 1000, which is the ship that's been used in Star Tours, I should say, at the Disneyland parks. There's been lots of variants that have actually shown up in Star Wars Rebels. So The crew of the Ghost took that ship a few times, and they're trying to be incognito. But
Very cool.
yeah. One of the things I wanted to do at the end of this episode was come up with some predictions for what might happen over the course of the next 1,000 episodes of the podcast, should we be so lucky to still be around at that point. But I'll let you go first. Maybe we can take turns here. Did you have any predictions for the next 1,000 episodes?
For us personally, or just in Star Wars news, or both?
What's going to be happening on the podcast over the
Oh,
course of the next Star Wars? What are we
on
going to
the
be talking about? What are we
podcast.
going to be covering?
Okay.
What's going on in Star Wars? However you want to interpret that.
Well, I had a couple of different I did it from both angles, so just
Mhm.
in case we,
Mhm.
went different directions, but I'm really hoping that we will continue to have more guests on the podcast, maybe some book authors,
Okay.
maybe some more voice actors. I would love Mr. Jim Cummings if you're out there listening. Sam Witwer, for example, those types of things. And I'll keep bugging people to record bumpers for us, which I have to say, once again, thank you to Vanessa Marshall and Catherine Tabor for recording those amazing bumpers for us. And I was really hoping to get to go to Fan Expo Cleveland. I'd been talking about that, and I was actually going to see if maybe Hayden Christensen would do one for us. But we had some plans with the grandbaby change, so I'm not going to be able to go to that at this time, but that's okay. And so, I love that kind of stuff and being able to interact with just guests in general. I think that's great. We talked about celebration. I don't know, Dennis, how do you feel about maybe holding a podcast on one of the celebration stages? Would you be interested in doing that?
I would be interested in trying. However, they are starting to move away from that with the pod. There's no longer a quote unquote podcast stage, a celebration.
Mhm.
They've been kind of making it into a content creator stage. So I would not be adverse to it, but it's not high on my list. I have a similar prediction though, with regards
Mhm.
well, I'm sorry, I should say related prediction. After Star Wars Celebration LA, that will not be the only celebration that you and I are attending and covering in the next 1,000 episodes. There will be another celebration in the United States, but this time it will be back in Orlando.
Mm, I wouldn't be surprised because I think they're going to just keep going back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be
Mm-hmm.
nice if they could do something more centrally located, but I don't see that happening. So I'm hoping
I
that we can go ahead.
Yeah, I think there's really a limited number of cities that they're going to go to at this point.
Mhm.
It's got to be someplace that has a large convention space and plenty of hotel accommodations nearby. And so, as much as I'd love to have one here in Dallas that I could drive to every day, that's not going to happen.
Mhm.
I think, we're really looking at the Orlando area, the Anaheim, LA area, and maybe Chicago and Indianapolis going forward. I don't think they're going to. I, I'm sorry. And look, I'm not addressing anyone in particular. It's not a matter of fairness. It's not like the NFL draft or the Super Bowl, which rotates through cities after city after city. It is some place that they know people are going to want to go and do the things. And when you go to Orlando and when you go to LA or Anaheim, you get to go to the Disney parks. When you go to Chicago, you're going to a major city that's got a whole lot of other things to do and tons of hotels. And so that just doesn't work for every city that's out there,
Mhm.
no matter
Mhm.
how much it would be convenient for all of us. And it's simply just not a matter of fairness. They move it around and they try and get the maximum attendance out of it. And that's the plan.
You know what I really would like to see though, in addition to something on the scale of Star Wars Celebration, but more, I hate to say mainstream, but more accessible, I guess you could say, because
Mm,
let's face it, Celebration can be really inaccessible for a lot of people, is
sure.
something like a multi-city Star Wars concert tour. Do you remember the
Oh,
old
yeah.
Star Wars in concert type
Hmm.
things that used to go around? Something like that, or an immersive live arena show? That would be really cool. Or
Hmm.
even another traveling exhibit with some of the real screen used props and things again. And I know we've had a few of those around, but it would be fun to have something on a larger scale and allow fans from all over to pick their part of the country to be able to go to. And we might be able to, run into a lot more friends and fellow podcasters that way too.
All right, well, that's your wish list item. Give me a prediction. What is
Yeah.
going to happen in the next 1,000 episodes?
My wildest prediction. Oh, a major Oscar-winning director announces the standalone Star Wars film and it actually releases on schedule.
Okay.
Da-dum.
Do you have anyone in mind?
Not necessarily, but along those lines, I feel like we might be headed for the first R-rated Star Wars project.
Really?
And
You
we
think Dave Filoni's going to
hinted
go
at
there?
that. Well, I don't know if it might be a horror genre or something
Uh-huh.
of that nature that warrants something of that, that rating, but I feel like it's been kind of hinting that. So it could have, some real moral ambiguity to it, maybe a political thriller vibe like Andor, but even darker. So I don't know.
Okay. Well,
You
hey,
said
we'll come
go
back in
ahead.
episode 2000 and see what happens. But all right, here's my next prediction. In addition to The Mandalorian and Grogu, we will have covered the theatrical release of two additional Star Wars movies by the time we get to episode 2000. This will include the first episode of Simon Kinberg's trilogy and at least one of the movies that we've heard about in the past that has been shelved, which will get revived. Furthermore, there will be planned sequels to both The Mandalorian and Grogu and Starfighter.
Like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Let's
What else you
hope
got?
so. Well, another one I think that we're going to end up seeing is, and I guess I'm being a little depressing here, but the death of a major character. And I'm thinking we might see the end of Ahsoka at some point.
Really?
And yeah, I really do. And I feel like that's going to be more of something that's going to be not like fell into a portal. It's going to be a full mythic, tragic, beautifully scored death for Ahsoka. And it's going to be something that, really brings the fandom together. A heroic sacrifice, maybe saving Ezra, maybe to stop Thrawn, something of that nature. Something that can pass the torch to the next generation. It's going to hurt, but it would definitely be devastatingly powerful.
Yeah, I think that's how they'd have to do it. If they're going
Mhm.
to get rid of that character, it has to be because there's another character waiting in the wings to take the
Mhm.
mantle from
Mhm.
her, because they've told all the stories that they can tell with Ahsoka, as I think the
Yeah.
only way that really works. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I also thought about her, becoming something else, something like a guardian in the world between worlds. So instead of Ahsoka the White, she becomes Ahsoka the Eternal. Ooh.
A whole new level of Force mysticism.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. I could
All
see
right.
Filoni going there.
Buckle up, because I've got a huge prediction here.
Ooh.
All right.
Okay.
Disney Plus will have one live action season per year, including the live action Clone Wars limited series featuring Ewan McGregor, Hayden Christensen, Ariana Greenblatt, Tamara Morrison, and Daniel Logan as our clones. Natalie Portman returns to do a cameo appearance as Padme. Samuel Jackson also has a limited appearance as Mace Windu. Ian McDermott comes back as Chancellor Palpatine. Yoda returns for the voice work for Frank Oz, and Jar Jar motion cap work is done by Ahmed Best. A digital Christopher Lee will appear as Count Dooku, and Ana de Armas will appear as Asajj Ventress, and Matthew Wood will reprise his roles as the voice of General Grievous and the battle droids. Look for that in 2029.
Oh, I love this. That was a
Bring it
lot of
big.
You're not kidding. Well, and we've done some of those fan casting kinds of things before, and some of those are already, I know, established characters that have been cast, but wow, that is awesome. I
Yeah.
love that. Sign me up.
Yeah. Hey, look, it's a wish list item as much as it's a prediction, but there seems to be a lot of interest from Hayden, Ariana, and Ewan to get that done. And Natalie said she'd be game if there was a role for her. The
Mhm.
trick would be getting Samuel and to come back and de-age him and the like, but he seems to do everything these days, so why not?
It's so true. And they can do so much, with CGI, as we were just talking about with like Luke Skywalker and the like. So as
Yeah,
long as
and I
they use
loved
it
Ana
for
de
the good.
Armas and the ballerina from the Wick franchise, so that's
Mhm.
why I cast her as Asajj Ventress.
Mhm. Oh, no, that's a great one. That's a great, great choice. I love that.
Mhm.
Okay, so my next prediction is that there is going to be some sort of project that is going to revive the old republic in some way.
Mm-hmm.
So whether that's going to be a movie or a Disney Plus series, I'd like to see it as a Disney Plus series, quite honestly. I mean, we've talked about some of the movie that was supposed to revive, like, the Knights of the Old Republic thing, but I think that we could do a lot with not necessarily rewriting the story to align with current canon, but things that deepen the Sith lore, expand on the Mandalorian Wars, those types of things, revolutionizes some of the characters that we know, characters like Revan and Bane. I would love to see that because you could really get things like the Sith Empire at its height, massive lightsaber battles, all of those things, and still work in a lot of the Old Republic stuff that is borrowed from the games and from the novels and, and. I think it would be more Bronze era feeling when it comes to Star Wars, and I think that would be a great move.
Yeah, I had something similar that basically they were going to do an Old Republic publishing initiative, similar to what they did with the High Republic, and that it would eventually lead into a revival of the Old Republic type games and a limited animated series featuring some of those characters, because they did have a Darth Bane that Yoda met the shade or in the Clone Wars. So something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
All right. You got any others?
Well, another one is a live action Jedi Fallen Order type movie or series, because we've been seeing some buzzing around this, and not, necessarily from the actors that you might think would portray these, but there's been some interest from other areas as well. And I can't remember I should have written this down, the actor that was interested in playing Cal Kestis, but it wasn't, oh shoot, his name just left my mind. The
Amanan?
one
Mahan?
Yeah.
Yeah. I just saw him in
So
Tron Ares. I watched that the other
Ooh,
day. It's a
nice.
very small role, but he's in it for a little bit.
Cool.
As one of the programs.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, I think they should just bring him back if they're going to do any
I
live
know, me
action kill, because
too.
you don't need
Monahan,
another actor to play him. So
because that is him, exactly.
yeah, he can absolutely do it. All right. Well, my last prediction is, well, it's kind of a 2-for-1 here. It's a bit smaller scale. Is that there will be a new Star Wars attraction announced for the Galaxy's Edge theme parks at Disney, and you and I will see each other in person there outside of a Star Wars celebration,
Yay, I like that. Let's do it.
because we need to catch up in person more than we do, and we've
Oh,
just
it's
been
so true.
limited to Star Wars Celebration. So
Well, and that's another reason why I was saying I was hoping that they would, or I'm predicting that they will do these larger scale type
yeah,
Star Wars events around the country to allow people to be able to connect more often, because that would be great.
indeed, indeed. All right. Well, this has been a longer episode than what we usually do, but I think that brings us to the end here of episode 1000. And this has been fun, Jay. I'm
Oh,
glad we've
yeah.
happened to do this. It's like I said earlier, it's something you and I have been talking about for weeks, and it just kind of felt like it was so far away, and then all of a sudden here it is. It's just like
Mhm.
how is it we're recording episode 1000? I feel like we just decided to do this a couple months ago, not 6+ years ago. So here we are.
That's so true.
But hey, I want to say thank you to all of our listeners for joining us on this journey. We hope you've enjoyed this episode, and thank you for indulging us as we kind of look back and made it about us as opposed to a story or something else for the past hour and 20 minutes or whatever we're up to now. Thank you to all of our guests that have showed up over the years, especially everyone who's been come on the show and done one of the segments for one of our movie episodes. Dan Zare, when he came and talked about his book and other things. Greg Cass, when he comes up and talks about books. Ross Halibin, he's been our novel tie-in guest for a while. And we've just, whether it's the guest on World Between Worlds, there's too many to name, and I don't want to start giving too many names and inadvertently leave somebody out. I'd hate to do that and feel really awful if I did.
Right. Mhm.
But we've had a lot of people who supported us. Thank you, everyone who's bought one of our shirts, who's put it online, who shared the show with others. We've had a lot of advocates out there, and we couldn't be where we are today without all of you. So on behalf of Jay and myself, thank you once again. And if you're new, welcome on board. We hope you've enjoyed this discussion. We hope you get some ideas of some episodes that you can go back to. I'm going to try over the next couple months to try and get some of these classic episodes rebroadcast so that they're easier to find and you can hear what we're talking about. And you'll hear a very different format of the show. It's evolved quite a bit over the past 6 years. But again, you can find the show on your podcatcher of choice. We're available pretty much all the platforms that are out there. We'd really appreciate it, your ratings and reviews, where it is that you listen to the show. And then you can over to Retros app, which has got all previous 999 shows. It's going to be really weird getting into the quadruple digits
Yes.
when I'm formatting everything now. I'm going to have to make a conscious effort to do that. But Jay, you want to go ahead and remind everybody one more time what our social media contacts are and where we can be reached and found online?
Absolutely. And, I just want to add that there are literally thousands of Star Wars podcasts out there. And the fact that people choose to spend their time with us is something that we will never stop being grateful for. And I know when we started, I don't think either of us could have imagined episode 1000, but here we are. And you can continue to connect with us in our usual places, which most easily is Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust. And you can always check us out on our YouTube channels, which include the traditional YouTube as well as YouTube Music, and continue to send us those emails, podcaststardust@gmail.com. And we also have all of our Pinterest boards where you can check out all kinds of fun things for everything Star Wars. And as Dennis was mentioning, we do have a full line of t-shirts and sweatshirts and coffee mugs over on TeePublic. And it just really, really hits us where we live, as Darth Vader said in Robot Chicken, when we see people in our Podcast Stardust logo. So please hit up the link in our show notes, and that will take you right to where you need to go to purchase one of those items. And every one of those purchases does help to support the show. So we do appreciate that as well.
All right, Jay, the other big thing you got going on is cosplay. What's going on there?
Well, right now, I was planning on going to Fan Expo Cleveland, as I mentioned, but we had some plans change, and that's okay because it's definitely for a good reason. And so you can always check me out on my Instagram, though, which is at j.snipscosplay, as all of my Star Wars characters, including Ahsoka, 2 different versions of Hera, the fourth sister, my original concept Mandalorian based on Tahiri Vela, and much, much more.
All right. So upcoming on the show on Wednesday, we're getting into the Clone Wars because that's what we normally do Mondays, but we had 1,000 episodes to celebrate. So rearranging the schedule this week. And then on Friday, as we usually do, we're wrapping up the week with some Star Wars news. So with that, I get to say for the 1,000th time, thank you for listening to Podcast Stars, everyone. Have a fantastic week. Thank you all so much for listening. And until next time, may the Force